Good afternoon, colleagues, and welcome back to the SEAL Asia Conference 2020. It is my pleasure to introduce the moderator for Panel 6, Sunit Shrestha. Sunit is the founder of Change Fusion, a Bangkok-based organization that aims to provide growth opportunities, services, and assistance to social enterprises in Thailand. Sunit is an Ashoka Fellow. He is encouraging young people to engage in social sector work in Thailand and across South and Southeast Asia. By providing integrated support and advocating institutional changes, Sunit is creating a space for youth-led social enterprises in the mainstream economy. Sunit, over to you.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Loud and clear, Sunit.
Yes, thank you.
Happy to meet you guys again, and that's a great introduction. I never could have wrote that myself. But I understand we have now probably less than an hour now to discuss together. So perhaps we can begin. And then, so today our session is actually on cross-sector collaboration, especially in co-creating financing mechanism to support different platforms. When we talk about platform, actually this conference, we have been discussing with so many platforms, whether that's women empowerment, livelihood and food in agricultural value chain, decent work, health for all, youth social enterprise, rural revitalization, takes for sustainable development. So there's so many platforms out there that we have been engaging. So how do we finance them? And move things forward, that's always a very tricky thing. So we have today three panelists. First, we have Ken Ito from Asian Venture Philanthropy Network. There's a regional East Asia head. And I think it's best for me to let you guys actually introduce yourself a little bit on your organizations and also your work on financing. So maybe I would not talk too much about what you're doing. Second, we have Rini, Supri, Hartanti. She's a vice chair of Baznas, Indonesia. And last but not least, we have Lina Green, founder of Get It, and also Angels of Impact. She's now in Singapore. And so I think we have great panelists. So perhaps we can begin. And perhaps we can start by, perhaps first you can introduce a little bit of your organization, and then also discuss a little bit about in your organization's works. Have you mobilized or have programs that actually finance social enterprise or this different platform that we have been discussing? And if not, is there any way you think we can, or your organization could drive this co-creating financing mechanism? Thank you. So maybe that's the first round. So maybe we start with Ken.
Hi, thank you for your introduction. Hi everyone, my name is Ken Ito. I'm East Asia Director at the ABPN. As many of you know that the ABPN is a regional platform organization for philanthropy and impact investing in Asia. We founded in 2012, and we have footprint in 13 different countries, together with 60 staff members. And I'm representing basically Japan, including some part of East Asia. And we have been trying to build a platform of different resource providers. This capital we talk about is not only financial capital, but human resources or intellectual capital, network resources all included. So our idea is that we need to have some platform to connect these different stakeholders to exchange our ideas, to disseminate the innovative financing models, and also to form a collaboration among different stakeholders. So we are trying to formulate different type of projects on different topics. Something at the vertical might be the some products like impact investing or impact assessment or some other particular like a climate finance that type of product. And we also have some regional initiative. Different country reps are trying to build the collaboration, the joint project within the region with the different the stakeholders. We are proactively working with other platforms like Gene or IMP, so that our like a platform will be aligned with different global initiatives. And so these are something we do, and I'm very excited to join in this panel today. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Hi, thank you very much, Ken. So second, we have Rini from Baznas. Could you also introduce your work and also talk about your financing works?
Okay. Thank you very much. My name is Rini Supri Hartanti. Now I am Vice Chair of Baznas. Baznas is National Zakat Agency in Indonesia who established by government under the law of in Indonesia. So in Indonesia, zakat management is managed by agency who established by government. For zakat is just like obligatory alms for the Muslim people. Also, we have voluntary alms, and this managed by Baznas. But for the people, for society also has can establish organization who have Baznas by established as a zakat institution also. So maybe for financing for the social enterprise or actually zakat is we collect from the people. And especially for government bodies, we collect also from the government employee. And we manage the fund of zakat, infak, sodako, obligatory alms and voluntary alms, and then we distribute to people. Maybe this is for the financing, the model of financing we distribute to the people also through cooperation with many organizations, also maybe through SE, and then, but all of the financing has to go to our 8 categories because zakat is has to be distributed on Islamic way. So we have 8 categories in Islam from the beneficiaries of zakat. I think my introduce it's that. Thank you.
Hi. Yes, thank you very much. Next, we have Lina from Angels of Impact.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me to speak. I'm really glad to see UNSCAP is very focused on women entrepreneurship. I actually came into the social impact investing space as a social entrepreneur myself. Back in '97, actually, I spoke at UNSCAP in Bangkok about my role as a woman social entrepreneur. So I'd like to answer this question in 3 different categories. And the first category is, as a woman social entrepreneur myself before, I totally understood the need of funding for women entrepreneurs and the difficulty of women entrepreneurs to raise funds. And I was very inspired with Professor Yunus's book, Creating a World Without Poverty. So went on to do a gap analysis with funding from the WWF Sweden. And that actually did, pretty much solidify the fact that there was a funding gap. But after about 2 years of living in Indonesia, I realized that there was actually hundreds of millions of dollars in impact investing coming into the region. So wasn't sure whether there were really a need for the fund. However, we came across the Monitor Group report that was written about From Blueprint to Scale, which really talked about how impact investors aren't really interested in the area of poverty reduction. And there was a SRE ASEAN Community Forum organized by ASEAN Foundation that also talked about the need to form a women's angel network to allow local projects to tap into alternative funding sources. So Angels of Impact was started by a group of entrepreneurs and social investors such as myself to create an angel investment network to fund the missing middle women-led social enterprises that are targeting UN SDG 1, no poverty, 5, gender equality, and 12, responsible production and consumption. And to fine-tune our offerings, we actually hosted a lunch of women social entrepreneurs during a ASEAN Foundation Social Enterprise Forum, and we gathered inputs. So the second key message I'd like to say is that our programs take a very holistic approach to filling the funding gap. We initially started by doing matchmaking of funds, but realized very quickly that we needed to have an evergreen fund, which we set up so that we could give more flexible terms to fill the funding gap, and also right-sizing returns so that more profits kept with the enterprise and the communities. We also took a very ecosystem approach to our funding. So we don't just fund, but we also do capacity building to get social enterprises funding ready. And we did run a program called Women Impacting Social Entrepreneurship through a partnership with corporate mentors, where we worked with social enterprises to get them funding ready. And we also do market access to help the social enterprises sell their products and services. Our goal really is to help fill the gap, and we hope that someday we will no longer be needed, but as long as we're needed, we're here. And just last but not least, I just want to touch on one more thing. Our programs work on overcoming unconscious bias, because there's been the success of microfinance for women in Asia, but it's led to an unconscious bias that women only run small businesses and only can take small amounts of money. So in '97, we published a book called Sustainable Impact, How Women Are Key to Ending Poverty, to showcase and elevate the successes of missing middle women. And in 2008, we worked with Angin to publish a report for Oxfam Garcia program on the funding needs of social enterprises in agriculture. And most recently, May 2019, we interviewed 42 women-led social enterprises and published a report called Funding Needs of Women-Led Social Enterprises in Indonesia, Myanmar, and Thailand. So fundamentally, the approach we take is we use applied research to figure out where the funding needs are, and then we fine-tune programs and solutions to meet those needs.
Thank you very much, Lina. Existing financing programs or mobilizing different kind of resources. As we globally and also in East and Southeast Asia on social enterprise themselves, and beyond that, it's like the entire economy. For example, in Thailand, where I am, you know, like for the first time in our modern history, I think we would have like everyone is predicting around negative 10% GDP growth this year. 8 million potential people losing their jobs. Our tourism is around 17%, I think, of the GDP, and that is pretty much almost gone suddenly. So, and yet in Thailand, we are seeing like a lot of many social enterprise is actually solving all these problems and try to bring new solutions, but also to try to support the communities, make sure that local jobs are kind of there, and so on. So I would like each of you perhaps to discuss a little bit on how does this COVID-19 impact your work or your beneficiaries or like the social enterprises you're supporting. And if you have any idea or any thoughts on how do we creating different, you know, resource mobilization strategy or solution together. Thank you. So maybe we'll go with the same round. We start with Ken again.
Thank you, Sunit. Yes, indeed, the COVID situation is very serious, and even in Japan, we have a huge number of people who has a big risk losing the job. But maybe the differentiation compared to other Asian countries that the government mobilized a lot of funding for the almost unconditional loans and subsidies, and so physical like a balance is very much like damaged during this period. So that this is the big problem. And but something I personally think it's important is that it's important to fill this gap in this emergency, but at the same time we need to think about how we can take this opportunity to improve our social productivity. So this is also a big opportunity for us in the social sector to fully maximize the impact of the ICT technologies so that we can deliver the services to the beneficiaries in different ways. And also we need to come up with some innovative ideas to adapt into the new lifestyle so that we can quickly fill the gap which government or business cannot. So we have some interesting initiative by the social investors to fund these innovative initiatives in the response to the COVID situation. And I think this is like one of the positive aspect of the situation, that when the society change, like the online education has been a big issue in Japan. These conservative educational institutions keep saying that this cannot be done in Japanese environment, but overnight it's proved that we can do many things online. So I think these are some of the opportunities if we take this in a positive aspect.
Thank you very much, Ken. How about Rini? What is your thought on the situation? Rini, are you there? Maybe there's some technical issues. Perhaps we can move. Oh, here you are. Okay.
Sorry. Yeah. Of course, in Indonesia, under the this COVID-19 impact on economic growth, the poverty rate also increased from 9.2% in September 2019 and then to 9.7% by the end of 2020. And now in the third quarter is already, the growth of economic already minus. So it's really affected all the economic situation, also in the social. Of course, in the economic, in the business, in the private, and also, of course, SA and me and the philanthropic organization also the fund from the public also getting decreased than before. Yeah, I think.
Okay, thank you very much, Rini. So let's move to Lina. So, and any thoughts on COVID-19 and how do we should we collaborate on this co-financing strategy?
Yeah, as you know, the World Bank has recently reported that all the progress we made to eradicate extreme poverty since the 90s has pretty much been erased. So when we look at opportunities and prospects, I would like to actually I love how Dr. Lisa in her talk yesterday challenged us not to just build back better, but to build back fairer. And I think fairer is the key conversation we need to have when we're looking at funding structures. And yesterday, someone also talked about how COVID has been like an X-ray machine, and it's been able to see all the things in society that we don't usually see on a daily basis, just inequality, homelessness, even in the United States, there's all these situations. And as you know, Black Lives Matter suddenly wasn't on just a US phenomena, it was a global phenomena because social injustice was something people were standing up against. So this is the time actually, especially when we're talking about poverty alleviation, that we can actually do things differently. So I just want to take a moment to step back. And, I don't know how many of you might have watched the documentary Poverty Inc., where it highlighted that even after spending billions of dollars, we've still not tackled systemic poverty, while many individuals have profited from the industry of poverty, right? Because there's still a tendency to look at it top-down. Charity, poverty is for charity, it's for aid. It's a very top-down approach rather than a bottom-up approach to funding and empowering community entrepreneurs to tackle and end poverty. And few of these approaches also restore the human dignity of the, inverted commas, we call the poor. It's to how do we restore agency to help themselves and their communities, given access to resources and opportunities. And we've heard several speakers talk about how community-based entrepreneurship models have actually been very resilient through the times of COVID. And we found the same within our network of social entrepreneurs that we work with. There's a second thing I'd like us to think about, because here in Asia, we've also jumped into this whole field of impact investing as the solution. And I would recommend you read a book by this author called Anand Giriharidas, and he talks about winner takes all. And he actually warns us that impact investing is also broke. In fact, he goes as far as to challenge corporate social responsibility, ESG, even gender lens investing. Note, because all of these are based on the theory of do good, do well. And businesses are making money, creating negative impact, and we don't look at that, and they take a small portion of that to do good, but they still want to make money doing good, almost like double dipping into the cookie jar. So people are now calling out that do good and do well is actually a very extractive model, and it's a mantra that doesn't really help the social and environmental problems we're trying to help. And I'll give an example that we found here in Asia as well, this whole do good, do well. Millions of dollars actually from one of the government aid funds actually went into setting up a $100 million impact fund for women, but the grants were given to venture capitalists. And they didn't even consider women-led social enterprises tackling poverty in their pipeline, or they weren't even known to them. But they at the same time expected market returns from money that they had received for free, because those were the terms on which the grant was given them. So I think it's a very good opportunity for us to sit back and say, when it comes to social justice and poverty reduction, is do good, do well extractive? Should we change it? And I'd like to suggest that here in the United States, I'm actually talking to you right now from California because with COVID, I wasn't able to fly back to Asia. And there's a group called Common Future that has been developing ideas around restorative finance. There's a guy called Edgar Venuela who's written a book on decolonizing wealth and talks about how we need to move away from extractive forms of exploiting land and people. And one of the partners that we collaborated with is RSF Social Finance, and they have a structure of integrated capital, which uses capital to give grants and loans, but also reverses the power dynamics of how you give money and allowing the community and the beneficiaries to determine the best way the communities get funded and even the metrics. Most recently, Angels of Impact, together with the Justice, Equity, and Diversity and Inclusion Group, which is called JEDI, organized an all checks on deck racial equity, where we actually learned that pipeline development, due diligence terms, extractive financial terms, even exit expectations and impact metrics are all can be very extractive. So we need to be talking about how do we right size terms and returns to keep the wealth within the community and to help them get out of poverty. If we can look at this justice element, I think we have a great opportunity here to look at how government money, philanthropic money can come in partnership to be, for example, used as guarantees to lower risk for retail investors, setting up evergreen funds with social impactors such as ourselves, for example, but all working towards innovative financing terms that reduces this extractive nature, right-sizing terms, right-sizing, looking at innovative mechanisms like revenue notes, for example. So we truly believe that the path forward for COVID is really implementing restorative fund finance and integrated capital. And we really are looking for how we can help our social entrepreneurs. So we've also done our own quick survey of social entrepreneurs, figuring out how they're coping with COVID. And based on that, we're actually designing an online incubation program to help them get funded so that they can not just restore better, but they can actually restore fairer as well.
Thank you very much. We actually now have some question from the chat box from the audience and the organizers and so on. So like the first thing they asked is actually like, is there, in your opinion, for all of you. Do you think there's opportunity to create like a kind of social enterprise recovery fund to support all these different enterprises that are, you know, facing a lot of troubles, but as you mentioned, how to not only solve the problem, not only to do recovery, but actually to do things better and bring a new kind of system on board. So I think that's maybe a first bit of the question that maybe you can all respond first.
Are you directing this at me?
I think this time anyone can just...
No, I definitely think there is a great opportunity. And thank you for your comments, Dr. Lisa, as well, because I think there's a great opportunity. The key question is partnerships and trust. Because one of the things I've also found, I think ICEA is doing great work in calling this conference and getting all of us together to talk. Because in the past, a lot of us are competing for the same funds in a way, right? And everyone's trying to get money from the same donors. There's a huge opportunity here for us to band together and really look at it. It's to helping the region. Social enterprises, as the UN SCAP speaker in the FIRIS presentation said, are very key to restoring social, environmental, and economic justice. And this is actually the time I think there is definitely an opportunity. And I really hope that we can find a way to create this recovery fund.
Thank you. How about Rini or Ken? Any thoughts on this?
Okay. Maybe in Jakarta province, during the COVID, the pandemic, the government of province of Jakarta launched the large-scale social collaboration platform. So this is the platform to for citizens who would like to tend a hand to fellow citizens in need, with emphasis on a tight relationship among citizens. Donations submitted through the KSBB platform are sources from the people and delivered to the people and SME. So the government as just like collaborator, and the people as a collaborator, they can donate through the platform, but delivering to the people. And that Baznas DKI is the main part of the platform who deliver. There are two kind of the platform for the product is for the food security and also for SMEs, SMEs, small and medium enterprise. So Baznas, including as a main part of the partner of the IKSBB. So in the private sector or the individual people, or also the community can make a donation through the KSBB and deliver to the people through like Baznas and other organization. And for delivering this aid or this for the people, just like food, until June, we already deliver 100,000, more than 100,000 packets. Just like 100,000 packets, one packet is content just like 5 kilos of rice. And for delivering that, we have a collaboration with also with SE. So many SE who has a product, a program for the, they have product in the empowerment of the farming. We can has a collaboration. So the we just like market delivery. Yeah. So the SA can as a supplier of our delivery to the product to the people, and also SE or SME or other organization, also a Zakat institution who has a program for the farming can make a coordination to us. So the function of just like Baznas, we has optimizing public fund from the people, also from the KSBP platform, and then linking the multi-sector to have COVID-19 resilience with government, also with the organization, and also optimization to collaboration with SME and SE to become suppliers in COVID testing. And we can also provide capital for SME or SE who involving the poor in their supply chain during the COVID. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rini. There's actually a question on the chat box if Baznas can actually support this kind of initiative outside of Indonesia.
Because my Baznas is for the province. This is the Jakarta province, so we cannot go beyond Indonesia. But in the national level, we can, yeah. Now, and I'm in the province level, Lisa. So you have to go to Dompet Duafa.
Yes, thank you very much. Actually, Rini also mentioned briefly, and also Lina, actually, we're discussing a little bit about how to engage different parties to bring new thinking, fairer thinking, and structuring of these things. So Ken, and any thoughts on the same question, but also any interesting example or unique strategy that you can think of in terms of how to engage different other sectors, whether it's private sector or financing sector or even philanthropic sector, because the topic is cross-sector collaboration, right? So who is crossing who? So yeah.
Yes, I agree that we need more investment into the new infrastructure, which we need to cope with the new lifestyle. But my concern is that if we talk about the demand side, there's huge demand, and there's how to say this, we have very limited resources. So if we ask for like more funding, we need to prove that our effort is impactful than the government services or private businesses in terms of the social impact. So, and the interesting example maybe I can take from Japan is that we have some like shared system to aggregate the information on the COVID and on the website. So maybe you can take a look at the different municipalities' website. If you notice that these screens looks very similar. Actually, there's a small story behind this system. Actually, Code for Japan developed the prototype of this system in a very short period of time when the COVID broke out in Japan. And that was much faster than these local government develop like a TOR and asking for these major companies to bid, and these civic organizations mobilized all the IT engineers on a voluntary basis and create a very sophisticated, efficient system so that these local government decide to adopt it as their official website. And that was spread out to 30 plus different local governments. So I think if we can demonstrate that type of power as like a bottom-up process, like a more like agile like development process by the social sector, I think that will be maybe good case to say that this is worth to invest. So I think we have a lot of potential. That type of opportunities, we can demonstrate that potentialities.
Wow. Thank you very much. So actually, that's very interesting discussion. One thing is I think the main message from you guys are like, definitely we need something, but like the question is also like, but everyone is getting really poor. I'm not sure it's true, but like in Thailand, all the richest companies are still quite rich for them to properly engage on this kind of thing. So you also mentioned about how do we need to create like a fairer system of financing, right? Especially what Lisa is asking, whether it is, doing well by doing good, is it make any sense? sense, or is it a gigantic lie from some report long time ago that is trying to push people to, making impact and make a lot of money too, and everyone happy? And then I think almost 10 years later, and we found it's almost mostly a lie, right? Like very half-baked truth. So perhaps we can go back to Lisa to comment a bit on this. Like, if we really need to build a better and fairer financing model, what would be the key elements that would be very different than what is out there in impact investing or other form of traditional philanthropy? So perhaps Lisa can comment, for example, what's wrong with impact investment, for example. If you want to build a fairer system, then maybe we should, what are the key challenges, if not wrong, and then how do we build a better thing? Also, lastly, Ken also mentioned a little bit about bottom-up approach. That might be one key thing that is a bit wrong with impact investing. Is actually super top-down, From the day they imagine things, read the report, and then set up a fund, is super top-down. They don't even go into the market to check things first, mostly. So, so just over to you, Lina.
No problem. There was quite a few questions there. I just wanted to make sure I didn't lose the question in the chat box from Ping about corporates working with smaller companies, and I included a couple of things in terms of mindset shifts where corporates could work together, and I hope I answered your question there. Coming back to your question, first of all, we have to recognize, why are impact investors not interested in the area of poverty, right? It's very simple, because most of the time you're dealing with rural areas in which infrastructure is so bad, which means the cost of doing business is very high. I remember when I first started dealing with social enterprises, I'd look at their operating expenditure and go like, oh, this is not efficient, right? And you start looking at it from like a urban developed country point of view, and then when you actually go out there, you realize it takes 37 hours to get up to a small place, which, I was in Indonesia. I went from Jakarta to up in the mountains, and it took me forever to get up there, So the cost of doing business is high, and as a result of which the margins are low, and therefore the do good, do well mantra doesn't really quite work. That's why you really need to look at it differently. So you need to be looking at doing business better. That's the other word that people are using now. Do good better, or do business better, as opposed to do good, do well. That's number one. Number two, it's not just about putting money. Because if we're putting money, but we're using the traditional way of giving out money, which is, for example, loans, and then we get debt coming back, it can be quite burdensome, especially during this time of COVID, where there's so many things that social enterprises are dealing with. What they need is flexible terms, right? They need either low interest loans. For example, the example that I gave earlier, social enterprises are being asked to give personal guarantees and collateral and then pay 12 to 24% interest. There's no way they can take that. It's too burdensome. It's very extractive. So that's where the mindset shift had to come. If we are looking at social enterprise, especially the community-based enterprises, as the most resilient and sustainable way of addressing poverty alleviation, then we should not be looking as before that charity I give away and then I have to give again, and then or impact investing I do good, do well, right? Why can't there be something in between here where the community gets the wealth? Because poverty is actually structurally, it's part of our economic system, right? Poverty is a man-made solution. Why don't we have man-made solution to keep wealth? People who are rich get richer because they have access to capital and access to assets that poor people don't. Why don't we shift it? Let's start with the terms, so financing terms. How do we create pipelines? A lot of impact investing, like you, Sunit, mentioned, they always say they don't have pipeline. When you talk about women entrepreneurs, they'll say, oh, I don't have pipeline. Well, I can give you pipeline. We've got lots of women entrepreneurs. You've seen them here, right? Due diligence. How do we go through the whole due diligence process? It's very extractive. It takes forever. 1-2 years. That's a lot of time for a social enterprise. Time is money for them. They are in the community. They're solving business problems, right? There's investors want to look at exit. A lot of social entrepreneurs, this is their community. This is impact they're doing. They don't want to exit from the company, so we have to look at exit differently. So there are many different levels of which, and even impact metrics. Impact metrics are being defined by the investor rather than the community. And therefore they spend, some social enterprises have to hire somebody just to do impact metric for them, so they can prove to the impact investors based on their terms what impact, whereas they are making real impact on the ground. So I'm just giving you certain levels of which it's not just about money, it's also a mindset shift. We need to look at this as restorative finance, where we're doing sort of like what was traditionally aid and charity in a different way, but bottom up. And then we can get that success going. I'll pass the ball.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much, Laina. So, Rini or Ken, any comments on all this question, and how do we actually rebuilding this so-called social investment or recovery in investment that is actually fairer and better for everyone?
Maybe Ken first.
Yeah.
Well, the mobilization of the fund, and talking about this how we can approach. There's a lot of like negative indications, as you know, that the market shrink and the foundations are suffering from loss of the endowment, and the general public charity. I mean that the public the donors are also struggling to survive. So I don't know how these statistics on giving will look like in this year, but this might be very tough year for sure. But some like a positive indications are like I'm being in touch with some of the cloud investment platform in Japan, and actually they are growing despite this situation. And the reason why Lena mentioned that this mindset change, that's very true. And interestingly, these cloud investment platform, the companies starting these social investment products. And I was asking why that you have been doing all the real estate investment or like SME investment, which looks like a very positive social, that's financial return, but not much of social. And these people interestingly replied to me and I said, well, actually these products attract more investors than ever. So in terms of retail crowdfunding the market, there's a positive indication that the retail investors are actually paying more attention to the social impact. This is still a small like a part. We only have like around 20% of the ESG market of the total investment in Japan. This is like a number in the last year, but this is booming, and also this is impact like the providing influence to the retail market as well. I think this is maybe the one of the trend we need to capture to materialize the discussion here in online here.
Thank you. Rini, do you have any comments or any thoughts? If not, actually, I was seeing on the chat box that Lisa said she might want to share something about some discussion on SE recovery fund from other platform discussion before. So if I understand that correctly, would Lisa want to join and say something?
Yes, thank you very much, Sunit. Yes, we actually created a social enterprise recovery fund working group between the platform for We Live Food, which is Women's Empowerment, Livelihoods and Food in Agricultural Value Chains, and the other platform, which is led by WFTO Asia, World Fair Trade Organization Asia, and Asia Pacific Bureau for Adult Education, who are co-leading the platform on decent work for all in sustainable value chains. No? And our initial thinking on the Social Enterprise Recovery Fund is that we need to use existing social enterprise resource institutions and microfinance institutions, because these have been the proven institutions that have served social enterprises and the poor effectively. But these social enterprise resource institutions that have these funds and the microfinance institutions need new funding and need big funding. Yeah. And we think that multilateral banks like the ADB need to be gone. I mean, we need to get big funding from banks like the ADB, no? Not just, pittances of funds, because we need a big recovery fund for Asia Pacific. The second thing is that we discussed the qualification process, and there is a model called NAID 51 that the World Fair Trade Organization Asia used for qualifying social enterprises that could get support from UNHCR for for social enterprises that support refugees. Yeah, and what they NAID 51 model did was that they reduced a complicated process of certification of fair trade organizations into a simple process that could be done in a month. So that we can actually try to look at this model in terms of qualifying social enterprises that are part of the 5 platforms. Yeah. So, I mean, they are doing good, right? But we need to qualify them in order for us to make them avail of the fund. And we are willing to do that, create a system that has been tested by a UN agency to work, yeah, with refugees in a bigger way, yeah. And then the third thing that we discuss is that the funding support needs to be hybrid in nature. It has to be a combination of grants and soft loans. That it needs to also be treated as an emergency fund to be released quickly, because of course the recovery process needs to be quick. No, it cannot wait for 2 years. Yeah. So I guess the reason why we're asking the prospects for working with ABPN, Angels for Impact, and even Baznas, or the national Baznas in Indonesia maybe, is that is there a possibility that we can put our heads together and come up with this social enterprise recovery fund that would actually already use our existing resources? Because many of the members and partners of ISEA have existing social enterprise resource institutions that are providing hybrid financing on a regular basis to social enterprises. They can be very well used to release these funds, no? And they have the credibility to do that among social enterprises. So we don't need to create any bureaucracy. We just need to decentralize implementation, but we have maybe a program management office that would actually create and synergize these efforts in the decentralized way. So maybe that's the reason why we're pushing the possibilities for working with you, because you are very credible to us, as social enterprise resource institutions. And I guess what we're trying to look at is possibilities of co-creating and leveraging, so that we talk to ADB, we talk to UNSCAP, and then we create this qualification process. We create this big fund that we can then decentralize in terms of distribution to the poor and through the social enterprises that are really qualified. Thanks.
Thank you, Lisa. Anyone want to give some early comments on that? I also have some thoughts as well. But yeah.
No, definitely very willing to work with you, Dr. Lisa, because it is a big problem and it cannot be solved by only each one of us doing our own thing. But the only thing I'd say is that it will not, so when I said integrated capital, actually I meant hybrid. So that's another term that's being used here in the US. What we need is not just one big fund, because sometimes that also becomes a bureaucracy by itself, right? We need innovative ways of flowing the money. You're completely right. If there's an existing infrastructure, it is good to be able to use it as long as that infrastructure can be flexible, because sometimes banks and MFIs are not very flexible to change their right sizing of terms, or they still have a certain interest that they will go with. Where the funding that comes in from, say, government sources or foundations or philanthropy into this fund, there's several ways we can be creative with it. For example, that fund could be used as a guarantee as opposed to that fund necessarily flowing, right? That's one way to reduce the rates or to reduce the risk. It could also be used a way to incentivize retail investors to come in and co-fund. So definitely there's a lot of room to learn from experiences from other places that we could apply in Asia. We're happy to work with you on that.
Thank you. Rini or Ken, any thoughts?
Yeah, I believe that in developing SA must be supported by modified funds, just like Lisa said that I sometimes said that this is, we call it like blended value, so a blended finance. So because when we expect that we can have economic impact and also social impact if just supported by just like commercial fund or just angel fund, I think the mitigation of risk, the social enterprise cannot be done. If supported by just like social fund or in philanthropic fund, I think this is for the mitigation of risk, for the business of the social enterprise can be limit, can be decreased in the early of the SA for in this case, of course, in the recovery. So maybe just like in the philanthropic fund can be delivered to the society who, that's the beneficiaries of SE. And then SE can deliver as just not as a business scheme, but as a just like empowerment scheme. And then also the SE also can connect it to the philanthropic organization also to deliver the output of the product from the beneficiaries of the poor, because the philanthropic organization also deliver or distribute many aid for the poor. Just like in the COVID-19, this COVID, we deliver the food, we deliver also the medical tools for the medis. We also deliver a masker, just like that. So just like masker, it can be produced by SE. And then philanthropic organization buy from the SE. And also in the, just like in the case of the food. So I think I agree with the SE can be recover and collaboration with just like philanthropic organization, also the government, because the government is in the middle of all of the function in the recovery during pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rini. Ken? How is your new Prime Minister, by the way? Is he nice?
Oh, well, we have, I don't know, as a social sector person, as we have a mixed feeling about the LDP government, because I have many disagreements politically, but they are like managing somehow the economy floating. But the one thing I know about him is that he is a big supporter for the impact investing. And he's one of the leading politicians who pushed the PFS, SIBs, you know, this type of new financial mechanism. So that is something we are expecting.
So the Japan-backed Asian SE Recovery Fund is possible.
Well, I'm not sure, but something I'm sorry, but I'm sorry if I repeat the same story, but this fund, I think, need to find some particular investment focus. You know, that I know that all the restaurants industry are suffering a lot, but we cannot say that we need to subsidize these like shrinking industry. Maybe, you know, some social enterprise doing, I don't know, delivery of the foods instead of without any like the seats and tables. Maybe this might be a good investment. Or maybe
we have that in Thailand.
Yeah. Or maybe educational institutions focusing on the, I don't know, primary education online, I think that will be good investment, which is very appealing, both in terms of financial and social impact. I think so that we cannot say that these poor people need to survive, so give me money. So that we need to have some the logic to overcome that kind of like demand side discussion.
Yeah, but accordingly to some logic, there's some reason the system made them poor, right? So from a justice perspective, maybe. Anyway, one thought I also have personally is that like Lisa and you guys have been talking a lot about how to kind of using more decentralized concepts and idea to make this kind of funding or mechanism plausible. But then, of course, we talk about using a decentralized system, but try to get big money again, from ADB and all the World Bank and all these big people, which is great. And I think if we can get that, that's great. But also maybe it might be interesting to go to the other extreme, and ask like, can we decentralize everything all the way? I mean, if it can get big money, it's fine. But, from, actually some example from like more than a decade ago, which is Kiva, right? How do we, for example, that's a kind of interesting model. Also like to do, because as Ken mentioned, as long as we get, or like Lina mentioned, as long as we get big money from either governments or international development agencies or even big corporations, the financial restriction would be always there. It's going to be difficult to go beyond that. And we need those money for specific purpose, similar to what Ken was saying. But perhaps we can have some discussion or some thoughts on whether or not we can, like my biggest problem with venture philanthropy or impact investment, not problem, but something I feel always a key issue is the democratization of the social investment, right? It's actually in the hand of very, very, very few people, whether it's they themselves or the institution they represent. So how do we democratize this kind of financing, funding? How do we work with millions or more donors or investors? And Ken already mentioned, even in Japan, this kind of crowdfunding tools are on the rise, right? So this might be a good time also to take a leap of faith and then actually jump towards a completely new system. Of course, the blockchain dream never really come true yet, but maybe that's where we can think. So maybe one last round of if you have any thoughts, more thoughts, or any practical step that to make Lisa point a happy point that we can maybe lead to something practical. So one last round. Thank you. So maybe Lina?
Yeah, sure. I'd like to take up on the last point that you just raised as another thing for Dr. Lisa to consider, is that how can we innovatively use that funding that you're using to raise to also unlock other forms like what Sunit is talking about with crowdfunding. One of the things that people have found is that communities, if you set up structures in which communities are helping each other, it's actually very good. And it's much more resilient. But the key thing is you're also allowing the wealth to stay in the community, because if they're investing and they have a vested interest in it, it actually solves, it's like killing two birds with one stone in a way. So definitely, I just want to add that point that Sunit don't say, it's an opportunity for us right now to look at innovative ways of doing things as well.
Thank you, Rini.
Yeah, I think in the recovery is each of we have to optimize all of the local resources in each country, because if we said that crowdfunding or this financing across the country, I think now each country has difficulties also. So under the maybe experience of Indonesia is the most generous people, so we can optimize also for the just like in the Indonesia. So the key is the collaborative between many organizations and also many stakeholders.
Thank you, Rini. So perhaps we can end with Ken.
Thank you for this great opportunity for like exchanging ideas. And actually, this series of discussion enhanced my belief that we need a system-changing innovation. As Sunit mentioned, that there's this mechanism that why the poor people get poor, and we need to think about what kind of new mechanism we can create. And I listened to thinking that there's an interesting move on the like a credit score or alternative credit score type of thing. So I know one of the Japanese financial institutions investing in I think is it like a Grab, and they are making loans to the Grab drivers, which doesn't have any credit score, but they have a driving history. So prove that they are diligent and hardworking, good rating from customer. And this makes a good rationale for these financial institutions put money on the loans. They purchase the new vehicle when they continue the business. I think this type of new financial mechanism, and this example is just for the financial return, but maybe we can incorporate social return on it with some IoT, type of data feeding, and if it's automatically like accumulated in database, I think that will be something to create a new capital market for the social investment. But that's just an idea. Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much. It's very funny, right, that we are living in now a data-driven world with big data and AI and everything, but we rarely did hear any proper discussion or any real tools being employed by either venture philanthropy or impact investment communities at all on the data side. So I think this is another element that would be interesting to explore. So I think we kind of ran out of time now, and thank you very much for all the panelists and also the audience for joining us today. I'm pretty sure the organizer would definitely summarizing few ideas that we have discussed, and our agreement definitely that we definitely finance this have blended finance and everything. But I think the last point everyone seems to be making for all three of our group is that it really need to rethink this whole thing as well. How do we really need to bring innovative financing models to make this work? So with that, thank you very much for joining us, and let's move to the next session.